is just going to be kind of a follow-up of all the points that Mr. Paul touched on, and it's going to be catered to, I know there's not a lot of students on here, but the adult advisors can definitely take this process back to their schools and counties and try to use programs and the data from those programs to cultivate policy and institutionalize school food waste action. And I did not know that Shrusti and Pragna and Mr. Richardson were going to be here, but we're all working together over the past 3 years under the Maryland Coalition to Reimagine School Waste. I am Advika. I'm a rising senior at Richard Montgomery High School in Montgomery County, Maryland. And you guys can also introduce yourself right now.
Shrusti, why don't you go?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Shrusti. I also work really closely with Advika, and we first started our journey on composting in our 7th grade. And I'm also going to be a senior at Richard Montgomery High School in Montgomery County, Maryland.
Hi everyone, my name is Pragna. I'm also a rising senior, but I live in Frederick County, Maryland. I go to Oakdale High School. I haven't known Shrusti or Advika for as long as they've known each other, but we've been working together for the past few years and it's been really amazing.
Mr. Richardson, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I didn't know. Yeah, these girls are amazing. I started working with them when they were in 7th grade. I'm panicking because they're now seniors, and Paul, you talked about the need to continue and perpetuate this. We got to find underclassmen who understand the process, and I know the girls have been working at making sure that there are people who are going to carry the mission forward. Unlike Sweden, the U.S. is way behind the curve, and we're still trying to convince people of the importance of doing this. Even in Frederick County, there's some issues with, we did a tour. Pragna helped host an event with the county executive and school board member, superintendent. We thought they were all on board, and now they're crying that there's a budget shortfall, and they're not sure if they can afford to do it. They can't afford not to do it. But I'll go ahead and, Advika, why don't you go ahead and run with this?
All right. Okay, so this presentation is adapted from a slideshow that we gave to our county council president earlier last year, and also a presentation that Shrusti and I did, and Angelina, for the rest of the council, or the Board of Education. So this is Angelina. She can't be here today, but she is the co-founder of Compostology along with me, and she also started the program 5 years ago with me and Shrusti. All right, so just a little bit more about our coalition. We are a group of students and local and state officials all working to institutionalize school food waste action. Our advisors are Miss Erica from the Maryland Public Health Association, and she's really guiding us on a volunteer basis. Mr. Richardson, he introduced himself, and he is from Barty, and he provides so much support with education, logistics, financial support, and general guidance. And then we have Mr. Meyer, who is from our school public school system sustainability office, and he really helps us to go into schools and volunteer, train the children, and talk to school staff. So these are some of the partners that we would recommend you all making in your areas to really make sure that you can be successful with your programs. So someone from your public school system office, some type of nonprofit or other organizational alliance so that you can have more resources and traction, and just someone else who can guide your students. And I mean, a lot of you guys are already advisors who are committed to the cause, so looking for a group of students that will run with this over the next years will probably be a good idea. And then we also have, some state legislators. We have our county council member, Gabe Albornoz, who was the vice president at the time that this was formed, and the executive director of our state Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education. So back in August 2021, we just started by bringing all of these stakeholders together on a Zoom meeting, explaining our mission, our progress, and I'll just go into the next step. After that, we started applying to a World Wildlife Fund grant called the Food Waste Warriors Program, and Mr. Paul is a part of that. So that's a really strong way for all of you to get funds. We got $48,000. I think Mr. Paul got more than 20,000, maybe even more than that. And they provide a lot of resources and education and partnerships. So in order to get this coalition on paper, we had all of them write a letter of support to our WWF application. We had them, sign on our application. And that is when all the traction started to go beyond that one program in 7th grade. So before I get into the details, I'll just cover a few key points of progress so that you can see what your program in your state can look like after a couple of years. So first, as I said, we founded a coalition, and together between Compostology and Shrewsty's organization, Rise and Shine, we've started around 26 programs that do composting and food recovery. And I believe Shrewsty is going to be starting food recovery at a few more schools. Any of you guys can jump on and stop me and add anything to these slides as you want. And we've also secured a resolution where all the public schools in our county will be starting food recovery by the end of next year, I believe. As I said, we've had over $50,000 in funds for Compostology and for the coalition. Another key part of our progress is working with those 3 main state legislators to introduce a new bill in our Maryland legislature. And we worked for 2 years to advocate for that, and it's now passed. We're helping to administer it, and that is a state grant program that makes resources available to any school that wants to apply around Maryland. And their programs can be food composting at schools, food recovery, or even food waste prevention, which is at the top of the food waste hierarchy, so to speak. So in this bill, it allocates $1.25 million over 5 years. To say a little bit about the process, so the first legislative session, we had around 6,000 students write postcards to the state legislature expressing their support. That's what got the bill passed. But the year after that, we did a repeat. We got 12,000 students to write, and we got the bill funded for the first year, and that is $250K. So I'll talk more about that at the end, but that is a great way, or a great model, kind of a grant program. If your county or your state isn't willing to mandate school food waste diversion, at least not in the short term, you can definitely get them to provide funds in other ways. Currently, Compostology is working on pushing for a composting facility in our county so that we can encourage the county to fund more programs and even put aside, money in the budget every year far past we graduate, so that this can really be something that happens every year. And we're also starting to revisit the possibility of composting on site at the school versus just hauling the food scraps away, so that we can emphasize education and build long-term habits. So that's another key part of the program and a reason to kind of pound into potential funders, investors, and legislators when you're promoting your programs. And now this call kind of shows how we're trying to guide other students and states to follow our process. And we've also received a few recognitions. Shruti, do you want to also present? You can take it from here if you want. You can do the next few slides.
Okay. So these are just basic statistics about food waste and why I guess we wanted to tackle this problem. I think, at least for my organization, I'm sure it's the same for Compostology. But the reason I wanted to tackle food waste is just because I think everyone knows that, like, oh, you shouldn't waste food, but no one really thinks about the environmental aspect of it, which is why our organizations wanted to come together and bring light to this really big issue in our community. So these are just some statistics, specifically in our county. So 248 million pounds of food waste are sent in incinerators in 2017. And obviously this is before COVID, and I think since then we found that in fact food waste has gone up in our county. Also, our county uses incinerators to burn food waste instead of landfill, so it's a lot worse for the environment. So our county reported that 26% of our trash is food waste, but we actually conducted a waste sort a couple of years ago, and we found that over 40% of the trash you find in lunchrooms is food waste. So you can tell that we do have a lot of food waste in our counties, and we can divert a large proportion of it. Is there anything else you want to add on? Okay. So this is more about food recovery aspect of it, and this is something that my organization has worked a lot on personally. because we found out that while we were running the composting programs in schools, a large part of what the students were trying to compost were completely untouched, unopened food. So we realized that while it is good that they're trying to compost it instead of sending it to incinerators, we can instead take that food that the students haven't touched at all and they haven't even eaten, and instead give it to people who actually need the food in our county, especially because the levels of food insecurity have risen after COVID. So I think this was done at one of our waste sorts from one elementary school, and we found and this was from one day of lunch. So we found that around 60 items could be taken from incinerators to help fight food insecurity within our county. So
Tuesday, yeah. I want to jump in. That was what's pictured there. We had 28 students come out to my facility, and we brought 2 trash bags from Rock Creek Forest Elementary School. They have 8. That was only 2 bags. So the milk that you see pictured there was 1/4 of what the actual waste really was. You know, we had been talking about how how much food is wasted, but to see it in just 2 bags was pretty remarkable. And we are seeing upwards of 50% of what's going in the trash is organic. So that we've got data, and I actually have some data entry sheets I want to share with the group, because data is going to drive beast. If we're going to convince school systems to do this, you start 1 school at a time, 2 schools at a time, but you back it with proof that this can be corrected, and it has an enormous environmental impact. So I'll let you go back to that. Go ahead and keep going.
So something that both our organizations have really tried focusing on is the connection between the effects of climate change and wait, what's the word? It's slipping my mind.
Climate justice, like under-resourced communities.
Right. So yeah. So exactly that, we're trying to focus on that and try to alleviate them, because climate change does affect those areas disproportionately.
All right, so let's get into how the program actually works. And if you're looking to start one, if you're already starting one, we'll just go through this pretty fast. So our programs, we either have a 13-gallon or a 23-gallon green bin in the cafeteria. We have around 4 to 5 stations, and we call it a waste station. So students will start with their normal trash, and they will just put anything that is not food, that is not recyclable, into the normal trash bin. Then they'll recycle their paper and plastics, usually separately, at least in our county. And then we have this green bin, and they'll dump out any food waste that they can't eat, any rinds like banana peels, apple rinds, or just anything that they couldn't eat into the green bins. And we're finding that around 60 items are not opened each day, and we can actually just donate them back to the school. So those items are placed on a separate cart or a refrigerator, which Mr. Richardson has provided for a lot of our schools. And then finally, they'll put their trays onto a separate cart. So that is how our waste line works in these new programs. At the end of the day, the food waste bin will be transferred at the docking station of the school into larger bins, and that's exactly what happens with the normal trash. So there's virtually no extra work for the building service managers and employees. We make sure to emphasize that when we're pitching this to a school, and we meet separately with the custodial staff to make sure that they're, assured that they can contribute to this program without having to put in the extra time. And then finally, every week, our haulers, which are compost crew or Key City Compost, come with their truck and they pick up the waste, put it into a composting facility, and compost is created, helping to grow healthier food with more nutrients and richer soil. Here are just some of our schools that are composting, and no one else here is from Maryland, so probably doesn't mean much to you, but a lot of these have been starting for a long time, from like 2018, 2021, and they're still going strong. And more than just diverting waste, their students have really observed a culture change. They're a lot more interested in climate justice, in adopting greener habits, and that's been shown by, some surveys we did 5 years ago, but also just going there and talking to the students over the course of the year. we've had a lot more students come up to us and ask, what else they can do. How did you do this as a high schooler, and what can I do when I'm your age? Things like that. So it really is a valuable educational experience as well. Here's just some pictures of how it works. You see a waistline. You see students who are volunteering by the bins in the second picture. Yeah. All right, so I'll just go into how you can pitch the program at a school. This is kind of our standard process. We first create an educational slide deck that looks a lot like this one to the school principal, building services administration, as I said, and we ask our partner in the MCPS school system office that I mentioned to meet separately with building services and administration and staff and teachers. So since, high schoolers don't often have the bandwidth to do that, and neither do teachers, having a partner or a few partners in your central office is often very key to your success. In the same time frame, we get a contract from our hauler, and we also have set up a compost contract which outlines our responsibilities and the school's responsibilities. We go over that. We make sure that these schools can give more than 100% of their effort into making the program a success, because we really need to prioritize what schools get our funds so that we can give data back to the community and legislators. We also identify a lead teacher, so a teacher who usually teaches science or environmental science, and often schools will already have a green team, so we use their sponsors, and that green team is really responsible for creating educational material using the ones that we've prepared and volunteering by the bins. There's a lot of creative ways to get students excited by the program. We have, videos that play daily on the morning announcements. Some of the students we worked with when we first founded the coalition who've now graduated, they dressed up in like the school mascot costume, and they did funny voices and things for the elementary schoolers. So there's lots of room for creativity. And then we get the school and our team to sign the contract, fill in the paperwork. And we also send out these documents. We have an FAQ, we have a building service guide, and we'll go over that during all the meetings that we have with the staff. Oops. Okay. This is similar, but before the start date, we will make sure that we have enough volunteers for the first 2 weeks of the program. And these volunteers will just stand by the bins, make sure the students are dumping their food waste in the appropriate places, there's no confusion. Sorry, I thought someone was speaking. But we'll also take that 2-week period to play our videos that I mentioned. We also have like some in-class lesson plans that the teachers and students can present to their classmates or students. And that 2-week period is just building that momentum in the school and getting students to care about food waste. On the start date, either Angelina, Shrusti, and I will come out and visit the school, do a lunch and learn assembly presentation, or our Mr. Meyer, partner, will do that for us. And then after the start date, just throughout the year, we will maintain communication with the school, the teacher, and the hauler. So that will provide, new bins, new bags as needed. And we will track the data that we get from the hauler in a spreadsheet and send it back to the school so that they can share it with their community. Here's just some educational materials from 5 years ago from our very first program, which we always use as an example. In addition to just, launching the program, we also do waste audits, like the picture that you saw earlier. So be fun to a tarp. It between plastic, trash, and compostable food waste, recoverable food. We have them weigh it on a scale and just observe what they see. They talk about it, have a discussion, record the data. It's a learning experience, and then they'll repeat it at least 3 times a year, so beginning, middle, and end, and we'll see how the waste has changed and how the students feel about what is being put into the waste bins. Okay, so some key points of success to make sure are happening at the program includes no contamination. So if there's contamination, meaning plastics or trash get into the food waste, it'll be hard to compost and won't be accepted by the hauler. So whenever we ask the teacher to pinpoint, and make sure that they're staying updated with the success in the cafeteria, so they can let us know whenever they feel like food waste is getting lower. And that is not only an indicator of, potentially students aren't doing it properly anymore, but also that food waste prevention is working, that our education is working and making students more cognizant that they shouldn't be wasting in the first place. We also help with education as needed. So If there is a problem, we'll go in again, we'll send our volunteers, talk to the students. So yeah, it's really a simple system that can be adapted for each school's needs. I just met with some people from Rhode Island, who Mr. Paul knows, Warren and Jim, and they have a lot of creative ideas that everyone can adapt, including zero waste days, where students are challenged to not produce any waste that day. They get, badges and award ceremonies, and that's something that we'll be looking to implement, and we're here to, support anyone that needs it.
Really quickly, Advika, before you move on, one thing that can be really good to decrease contamination is, and we did this at Oakdale last year, for spring semester, we had compost sweepers. They were just students who volunteered like 5 days at the end of each, or sorry, 5 minutes at the end of each lunch shift to go around the bins and just pull out anything with gloves that wasn't supposed to be in the compost or recycling bins. We gave students a half hour of service hours for each week that they did it. So it's just like a really simple way you can just make sure your contamination numbers stay down, because some haulers, if you get to a certain level of contamination, they won't let you haul compost to them anymore.
In Pragna, you also do some amazing things at Oakdale, where the students go into the classrooms at the end of the day and collect the recycled material and the Next challenge. So the students at Oakdale are taking this to a whole nother level. The more kids you get involved, the more things that they can do. You got community service hours. Well, just talk a little bit about how you got the students to go around and basically do the building services job better.
Yeah, so me and Miss Nave, who is our green team advisor at Oakdale, we found out that the recycling at our school wasn't actually being taken, or like the recycling that was in the recycling bins wasn't actually being taken to the recycling dumpster, and it was just being thrown in the trash for time's sake. So I interned with Miss Nave last year spring semester, and I organized a system of students to go around to each classroom at the end of the day, take the recycling and make sure it actually gets to the recycling dumpster in the back of the school. And so I had text reminders for students. I had like a sign up schedule. I had contamination notices that they could give to teachers if any of the recycling was contaminated, so that they can let their students know what to improve on. So it's definitely something that's possible. It takes work though. And I do think it's something that you can really only do if you have someone like an intern or like a building services manager to help oversee.
But they also do the Next challenge. I mean, it's really remarkable what Oakdale and Miss Nave have done. 50% of the schools in Frederick County do not recycle. What the building services do is they're worried about contamination. They could be fined if there's significant contamination in recycling. So their mantra is, we're just going to throw it in the trash and keep out of trouble, and undoes so much of the work and efforts that people are trying to do to recycle. We are pressuring the school system to really embrace this program and begin to divert a lot of waste. The school system may not save money, but the county government will. So those are some of the issues that we're still dealing with. But these are proven examples of programs that work, that are student-led. They wouldn't work if these students weren't able to get other people to help them and really involve their school communities. So we really think that high schoolers mentoring middle school and elementary school kids, getting student service learning hours is a huge mechanism. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Richardson and Pragna. I'll try to make the rest quick since we're nearing to 6 o'clock. Sorry, but here's just some data that we collected. Lately we've been collecting, Strusty runs this program now, but 2,000 pounds of food waste every month from Clarksburg Elementary, which is a relatively mid-sized school, nothing too large, and we're collecting so much food waste from them. But it's important to note that the rate is going down as we speak, because again, the education is working, and that's what we really want to, make most prevalent in our programs, is the education and the prevention. Here's just some testimonials. In the recording, you can feel free to pause and read them, but it just shows that the staff and the administration are not having problems with, their daily work because of this program, and it just integrates itself seamlessly into existing processes. All right, so turning these programs into a far-reaching movement requires more than just, programs, but you actually have to bring them to the attention of your legislators. So again, this was adapted from a presentation to our council, and I just left these slides in so you can see how we go about it. But we developed a budget for a gradual rollout in Montgomery County of these programs. So we set it for 2 years, and we would have 30 schools going for these 2 years until we had enough data and potentially traction with the facility to expand that to our whole county. And again, you can pause it later and look at the numbers that we have, but each program costs about $2,000. Of course, at a mass, bigger scale, it would be reduced with bulk prices and deals with contractors. But this is what we asked from our county, and we're continuing with that advocacy now after the state bill has been passed and everything. So we'll update everyone if we choose to work together more, which I'm sure we will. Yeah, and then I mentioned this, but this is part 2 of our ask. We're hoping to get another state bill to introduce a facility in our county. We also like to emphasize how these programs help to meet our existing goals. Our county has an ambitious climate action plan, which has been criticized by students for its lack of, rudimentary and concrete actions. So this is hopefully a way to introduce some of those actions into the plan. And it's hoping not only to reduce our emissions and get to net zero, but also to get more schools green certified. I don't know if that's a thing in other states. I think it is in many of them, but in Maryland, there's a process that schools go to get certified as a green school, which means, they're taking the right steps to become environmentally friendly and teach their students about environmental action. Trista, do you have anything else to add to this slide? Because I think you made it back then.
Not really. I think we just made this slide kind of like what Advika was saying. Our county does, we have a really, really progressive climate action goal, but they haven't really taken any steps past there. So we do like to emphasize that our program and our method of doing so fits into what they're already trying to do.
Yes.
What you have achieved, though, is Montgomery County, they haven't embraced composting and integrating it into their budget, but they've invested in mini refrigerators for every school. I had Rotary clubs buying mini refrigerators because we worry about shared tables with perishables. We want to keep yogurts and milks and things like that safe and not contaminated. So refrigerators with full glass doors are important. Kids, if they want a second milk, can take it for free. And Montgomery County now, they've invested in mini refrigerators for every school in the system. So food recovery is high on their priority. I'm struggling to get Frederick County in our community to continue the programs. There are people in administration who don't want to do it. In the meantime, there's thousands of students who have been doing it and going to push to make sure that it happens. I'm still finding out if we were funded by this county this year for at least the 10 programs we had last year, but we need to expand it. So we're still meeting resistance after 5 years of success.
Can I don't know if we get cut off after an hour, Paul, do we?
No, we're fine.
Okay,
But, yeah,
I'd like to ask a couple of questions.
absolutely. Go right ahead.
Advika, do you know you're being stalked by a strange man in back of you?
That's my little brother.
Okay,
He's there.
Just being sure. I also want you to know I don't like seniors very much. Just when you guys get competent, you turn into butterflies and hummingbirds, and that's the end of that. So that's my experience over 20, 30 years of working with high school kids. How many kids do you think it takes to pull off in each school to do all the steps that you have laid out here? Does 10 sound like a decent number?
More than that.
Yeah.
It's more than that?
Well, for us, it was mostly, like me for our programs, it was me and Angelina who like organized everything. And then the lead teacher kind of took her group of small, like I think usually it was 5 students in her green team and volunteered and did the education. So obviously that is a lot of work for the teacher. So I think, yeah, like Mr. Richardson said, the more students you have, the more equally the work can be distributed. But 5 could be enough to get started, I would say.
Pragna, how many students were involved in Oakdale last year?
In Oakdale, we had like 2 monitors per weigh station in the beginning of the year when we were first starting the compost program, and we had 4 weigh stations. So that's 8. But it's 8 per lunch shift, and we had 4 lunch shifts. So
And how many different students volunteered to be monitors?
it was mostly the same people each week. But we did have a decent amount of variation. Our environmental team at Oakdale is really big, but we don't see a whole lot of participation. There are almost 70 students, and we really only see like 40-ish participating consistently.
So, yeah, 40 is the number. And we found that in elementary school, they can have compost ambassadors where 3rd graders help 1st graders and 5th graders.
Right.
And there are a lot of kids who want to be compost ambassadors. We've seen 30, 40, 50 kids volunteered to help this program in various schools.
I'm also curious as to what you're doing in your community about community composting. You're talking almost exclusively with us, which is fantastic about the school program. We're composting in our community as well at our town dump. We have dumps here, by the way. Do any of you have experience working with your community and the homes that make up the citizenry?
So I can answer first. But Montgomery County has a pilot residential composting program, and we don't work on that. But the fact that they're expanding gives a bigger need for a composting facility. So that's where we're intersecting right now. And since our county already had that pilot, we just kind of chose not to get involved. But one thing that we are looking into now is starting the 3-bin composting systems around the community so that nobody has to transport the food waste away, but we do have to train, volunteers to take care of that system. And I think that's where education at the schools will come in. So we can reduce, older kids to volunteer for community composting, and that'll in turn bolster their school programs.
What we
Just
found
to share
is
my
that
experience a little bit. I used to be Earth Day 1990 had over 220 million people involved. It was huge. And what we discovered was that if we taught at the elementary school that all the good practices that we were trying to educate folks about came up through the kids into the houses.